What's up guys, my name is Angelo'S and this is my 1990 Miata. August of 2021, I ended up stumbling upon this Miata. It was bone stock at the time, and Jim's favorite. It had 76,000 original miles. It had a hard top. It needed a little bit of love. I ended up buying it thinking I was gonna flip it. Drove it home. Even on the way home, it wasn't even actually running right, but I fell in love with it. We got it back here. Me and Jim and Sean ended up taking it up the road a couple times, throw it around a couple corners. Every single time I throw it around a corner, it would shut off. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting myself into another mess of some sorts. Come to find out, after asking on the forums, it was just a bad fuel system. So I ended up replacing my fuel pump as well as my actual fuel tank itself. It was rotting out. So after replacing it, I've had zero problems with this car running at all. So as we do over here at Karbon Kings, we have to mod everything we buy. Jim told me, he's like, sell the damn thing, make some money. I couldn't. So immediately we started looking for aftermarket support for the car. We found an exhaust for it, ended up going with some really cheap coilovers just to get by for a while, and a good set of wheels. After about 3 or 4 months of owning it, piece by piece, I started finding out that there's way more in aftermarket support for these cars than I even knew existed. Everybody says if you ever get to drive a Miata, let alone own one, you're gonna fall in love with it, and I really didn't believe them. But buying this car and ending up keeping it even for 3 or 4 months changed my perspective on Miatas as a whole. I ended up falling deeper in love with the car, throwing a better set of coilovers in it, and then started getting under the hood. Jim and Sean recommended running a coil rad radiator, so we upgraded that, running a Moroso overflow tank, as well as prettying up the bay while we were at it. So we added a lot of pretty parts under the hood, being a brand new strut tower bar. I also got a radiator cooling plate just to match what I was doing under the hood, as well as powder coating the valve cover. After that, I started getting more involved with the car itself, figuring out, at first I thought I was gonna go really stancy with the car, camber it out, slam it, and figuring out the drivability of this car and how capable it is, even with such little horsepower. It was a no-brainer. We threw a good set of coilovers in it. I'm sitting on Revels currently. I would love to upgrade to Fortunatos in the future, but even the Revels drive phenomenally. Bring my way inside the car. I wanted a good set of seats, but nobody on the forums had any good suggestions. Everything didn't fit. We found out a good set of NRG Prismas looked really good in it, but didn't fit properly, so we actually ended up cutting them just to make them fit snug enough. If you wanna watch us cut those seats, check the link right here. It's pretty funny. It came out really well. Back to the video. While being on the forums, I also found that most people suggested running a roll cage. These cars being small, nimble, not a lot of horsepower, and definitely not the safest, I figure a cage would definitely help me out. You never know when you're gonna get in an accident. I've personally been in a rollover and it wasn't fun. Of a gentleman flipping his Miata, it hitting the roll cage, flipping back over, and he actually drove off. So that was my end all be all. I needed a cage. He actually ended up adding a cage to the car, and I think it looks great. Sticking to the interior, I ended up finding out that you can modify the dash with all sorts of different options. A company called Rev Limiter makes different dash pieces for over your speedometer, tachometer, as well as your gauges that are for your oil pressure and your fuel. On top of that, from Jazz Performance, I ended up adding a stainless steel brushed faceplate to complete the dash section of my car. Being on Jazz Performance, as well as many other sites like Miata Bits, You can find a whole lot of parts for these cars, which is why I really fell in love with this car. It's expensive to buy the car, but it's definitely cheap to modify it. From everything under my hood to everything inside of my car, nothing was a lot of money. The most expensive piece I actually purchased was my IRP short shifter, which is by far my favorite mod that I've put in any car. Not only was I getting ideas for modifying the car, but Jim and Sean were also backing me on it, which we always do with each other's cars. Jim ended up stumbling upon OMG Miata's Miata, and God, if you don't know that car, it's a piece of art. One of the things he has in his car is an IRP short shifter. I ended up finding it online from IRP itself and getting them to ship me one, and it is my favorite mod I've ever done, not only in this car, but any car. The shifting in it's a 67% reduction in shifts, and Jesus Christ, is it the best thing I've ever done. Another way I wanted to make this car mine, I've seen a few people do it, was doing the squinty eye mod. I definitely loved the pop-up headlights, and I love how people modify them so they can flip up. But the squinty eye mod makes this car look a little bit more aggressive, and you know, if you drive a Miata around, they're not that aggressive looking. They're more of a cute little car, and everybody assumes you're a hairdresser. But I wanted it a little bit more aggressive, and I love the yellow tint, so we went with a yellow set of LEDs, and they are bright, and they're great, and I really like the look. I definitely miss the flip ups, but I'm definitely gonna be staying with that. On top of that, after doing all this, I love the color of the car. The paint wasn't the best. We tried getting it fixed, stuff happened. We ended up saying screw it. We brought it over to TS Mobile. I knew I wanted to stick with a nice red, but I didn't know what red. Sean over at TS Mobile ended up finding me a red that I thought was perfect. Very close to the new school ND Miata red, but it's a little bit darker, so it was a perfect mix. So we ended up wrapping it a darker red, and I get compliments on it all the time. Everybody assumes it's paint. It is actually wrapped, and it came out spotless. So these cars having such a wide range of aftermarket support, you can really do anything with them. Owning the car now for over a year and putting about 12,000 miles on it, I'm about 88,000, 89,000 miles in on the car altogether. I figured out a little bit more power would suit this car really well, and everybody loves the sound of a turbo. Everybody says not to do the 1.6, so I'm gonna drop a 1.8 in it, probably a JDM 1.8 into it, throw a turbo on it. This does have the 5-speed. I do want to throw a 6-speed on it, as well as a Torsen rear end. As of right now, I don't have a limited slip, so that Torsen rear end is a limited slip differential. Making about 200 horse would probably be my happy number. I do understand wanting a lot of horsepower. Sean having a 500 horsepower Evo, Jimbo owning a damn near close to 1,000 horsepower Vet, soon to behold. Honestly, in a car like this that's super nimble, super fun to drive, being able to drive through every single RPM, every single gear, and get to really understand the grip of the car, throwing it around and not losing traction unless you want to, I think is definitely a necessity. So I think that 200 horsepower range would just be the perfect amount for drivability, daily driver, as well as if I want to make a little bit more horse, I'll have a turbo, I'll have a standalone ECU, we'll be golden. So while owning the Miata, I definitely have met a lot of people, not only on online social media, but in person. For example, I was driving one day, pulled off in a gas station to get gas, and a gentleman rolled in his Miata. Come to find out, it's this kid, Brian Scorb, great kid. We had a great conversation for about 25 minutes, and now we're great friends. The community, while owning a Miata, is amazing. Everybody waves. Everybody that owns a Miata, doesn't matter if it's an NA, NB, NC, ND, everybody waves. And anytime you go to a car show, everybody smiles when you come in. A happy looking Miata, I know mine doesn't look too happy. Everybody loves the smile on a Miata when it comes with those flip up headlights. While owning the Miata, I've been invited to multiple different groups of people that all own them, all the way from the top of New England to the bottom, and now we're in a group chat and it's all Miata talk. So anytime I have a question, I just shoot it over there. Somebody always has an answer, an extra part, an extra hand to give. It's a really fun group, and just owning a Miata overall, I think has been one of the best experiences for me while owning a car. This is, if I'm correct, my 18th car, and it feels like it's my first again. Everything feels fun, everything feels real. I know how to work on it. It's super easy to work on, from anything under the hood to inside the car itself, under the car even. Everything is very user-friendly, and they built these cars so anybody from a young age, being their first car, to somebody older that is getting more experience and trying to get into stuff like autocross and tracking their car and drifting, all the way up to somebody that's older and just wants a nice weekend cruiser. Everybody loves these things, and I don't see myself ever getting rid of this one, and if I ever do, I pray to God I buy another one, because there's not another car out here that I've driven in a whole long time that has given me the feelings that I have again for cars like this one has. From keeping the thing bone stock to wide bodying it, to slamming it, to lifting it, there's literally a place to buy everything. Unlike a lot of these other cars nowadays that are out there, there's not so much support for everything out there. It's literally the #1 selling Roadster in the entire world, and because of that, and because of the backing of the community, the amount of people that are out there 3D printing parts, you can get so much for these cars by so many people, by so many companies that genuinely love the Miata. It's endless. If you don't own a Miata, have never driven one, just go drive one. Find somebody that has one, ask them if you can drive it, and I guarantee you're gonna end up wanting to buy a Miata. I'm Angelo from Karbon Kings. This is my 1990 Miata, and I gotta go make Sean more money.